This is footage from the HOVERAir ProMax, a tiny little drone that I've been testing since the spring. And in this video, I'm going to share my thoughts on its overall use, of course, the size, specs, and how it all performs. Let's get into it. All right, so as YouTubers, well, we're always looking for new ways to kind of share or tell a story, showcase a product, or just keep things fresh, right? So video is a huge part of that, obviously. Without it, well, you just have this talking head on screen. And I don't know about you all, but I wouldn't want to watch just me for 20 minutes, 25 minutes straight. So getting that third person footage is a priority here, but it usually means setting up a camera and riding past it, turning around, and well, doing it again. A drone not only gives you, I'd say, that different perspective, but it also makes that process a whole lot easier. And while the HOVERAir ProMax is certainly no exception. So the company behind the HOVERAir brand is 00 Robotics, and it was founded in 2014. So they debuted with the Hover Camera Passport in 2016, a foldable enclosed prop selfie drone sold in Apple stores across more than 30 countries. So in 2018, they launched the Hover 2 with improved tracking, obstacle avoidance, and a Palm Pilot remote, followed by the long flight V-Copter Falcon in 2019. So in 2022 came the ultra compact HOVERAir X1, and just last year, they introduced the HOVERAir X1 Pro, and this one, the Pro Max, with upgraded imaging and tracking capabilities. Now, I'd hate to call these, well, selfie drones, but that's kind of what they are. These drones are designed to be incredibly easy to use and to capture you without needing to, well, use a remote. And that's the key here. All right, so before we get into the specifications of this drone, I do want to take a quick moment to let you all know that this video is supported in part by Tailfin. Tailfin designs and engineers technical bikepacking equipment for almost any kind of adventure. Innovation and quality are at the heart of what makes them tick. And their constant strive to create better performing gear means that you can just focus on enjoying the ride. They offer a range of options for hauling your gear, whether you're taking on a big race or simply escaping for an overnighter. So for more on Tailfin, be sure to click the card in the top right corner here, or also find the link in the description below. All right, so let's start with the size of this thing. When it's folded, well, the HOVERAir ProMax is basically the size of my hand, right? About 15 centimeters by 10 centimeters and 3.5 centimeters thick. It weighs 194 grams with a 1,920 milliamp hour battery, and each battery comes in at 64 grams. So for bikepacking trips, I usually actually brought two batteries, two spares, along with now a very dirty kind of stuff sack that it came with. And it either fit in my hip pack or my frame bag. Pretty nice, pretty compact. So all told, that setup, well, it was pretty lightweight, 340 grams. The batteries themselves are also pretty small too, 8.5 centimeters by 3.5 centimeters and 1.5 centimeter thick. So charging is simple with the included USB-C cable, and there's a micro SD card slot that supports up to a 1 terabyte card. Plus the drone actually comes with 64 gigabytes of internal storage, which is great to have both. So on top, there are 3 buttons for powering on and cycling through flight modes. All right, so when you unfold the drone, it basically doubles in length, obviously, measuring 17 centimeters by 15 centimeters by 5 centimeters. It is still compact, and actually, when you fold it back together, it's held together with a small, little, yet very strong magnet. So it uses 4 props that are fully enclosed in a durable, hyper-elastic protective frame, is what they're calling it. Both the props and the protective frame are replaceable. HOVERAir sent me this drone for review along with a pile of other extras. But honestly, you don't really need more than the drone and a smartphone to get started. And even then, you actually don't need a phone beyond the initial setup, depending on the flight modes that you choose to use. The bundles mainly add extra batteries and kind of more flight time there, or a controller slash beacon if you actually want to manually control the drone. But after using the controller and actually trying to install the beacon on my handlebars, I found that the phone was the best way to manually fly the drone, especially when, I'd say, weight and space are a premium when it comes to, say, bike packing or really any ride for that matter. All right, so the HOVERAir Pro Max will shoot up to 8K at 30 frames per second. And if you want slow-mo, well, you can drop that down to 4K at 120 frames. So it has a 1 and 1.3 inch CMOS sensor with up to 48 megapixel photos, 10-bit HLG HDR, and a 107-degree ultra-wide field of view. So the Pro Max is essentially an upgraded HOVERAir X1 Pro, with the most notable change being the video. So resolution jumps from 4K 30 frames per second to 8K 30 frames per second, plus 4K 120 frames per second slow-mo, and 10-bit HLG HDR for richer color. It also adds a slightly wider field of view, 177 degrees versus 103 on the Pro. So both models share that same compact folding design, enclosed props, and core flight modes, but the Pro Max's improved sensor and processing push it more into, I'd say, flying action camera territory rather than just a selfie drone. All right, so HOVERAir claims that, well, you get 16 minutes from one battery, which is more than their previous HOVERAir X1, and that time mostly matches my experience, though I rarely had it in the air that long. Most of the automated programs kind of take under or around a minute to run. In manual mode, flight times will obviously stretch longer, but I was actually really impressed with how far my phone could actually maintain a connection with the drone. HOVERAir actually lists different ranges depending on your device, with actually Android supposedly offering better range than iOS devices. Using my phone, I actually never felt limited though. With the beacon remote, you actually get up to almost, well, it's 0.62 miles, about 1K, while a phone connection, my phone, an iOS device, maxes out at about 820 feet or a quarter of a kilometer, unobstructed, of course. So honestly, I never actually needed more than that. But if you are dealing with more tree cover, unobstructed views, those numbers will certainly be less. All right, so using the HOVERAir Pro Max is pretty straightforward. So all you have to do is, well, unfold the drone, hold the main button for 3 seconds, and wait for it to power up. It'll kind of get loud, and then it will kind of do the ding, 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 and tell you what mode you're in. You can scroll through all of the video modes right on the drone. And honestly, this is kind of how I use it about 90% of the time, just for those quick shots. That's one of the biggest highlights of this drone. There's no need to fuss with a phone app before you actually want your shot. So once you've actually picked your mode, you can long press the side buttons to adjust the height or distance of that specific mode, or simply hold the drone out in front of you and then press the button again, and it will count down, then take off. So before pedaling off or walking away, you wanna make sure that the red light comes on right up front here. That means that you're being tracked. And once you're tracked, well, the drone will begin to record automatically, which is a big win for me. No more realizing after the fact, like I have with my DJI Mini 3, that I forgot to hit the record button. Sometimes it actually doesn't lock on right away, but if this does happen, the easiest fix is simply to stick your hand out and land the drone in your palm and then restart the process again. So when running a programmed shot, most modes actually return to you automatically. All you have to do is place your hand underneath the drone and it will land. However, for tracking modes like dolly track or the bike or ski mode, you will need to give a landing gesture, which is making an X over your head, and then the drone will fly to you, and then you can put your palm out and it will land. It doesn't work 100% of the time, but once you kind of get a feel for how the drone responds, it is reliable. But you really do have to get the X above the head, which, you know, if you got a shoulder issue, it can be hard. So keep that in mind. There are loads of pre-programmed kind of shot modes. Some work while you're stationary, including zoom out, orbit, spiral, which is actually a new one, bird's eye. And all of these have been really great for kind of dramatic shots on summits or clean product footage of, say, tents with overhead views. Then there are the follow modes, which is the ski mode, cycling mode, and dolly track, which, in my opinion, are what really kind of make this drone feel like an action camera. It's tracked me well on climbs, flats, and descents, both kind of high and low. And the gimbal does a really solid job of keeping that footage steady while following me on the bike. Of course, it's not without its quirks. For example, in this shot, the drone kept up nicely until I got going a bit too fast and outran its 26-mile-per-hour limit. I was probably hitting 30 plus miles per hour, so I can't truly fault it there. Obstacle avoidance is also it struggles at higher speeds. As you can see here, descending a bit of single track, we weren't going crazy fast, but it still couldn't avoid a small tree on the left. That just shut off right before or right after it collided. I've also noticed that the bike mode can feel a little jarring on some super tight single track with kind of constant side-to-side movements. It works really great on straighter trails, though you can smooth things out a little bit better when you do record in slow motion. So, dolly track. I'd say it's one of my favorite modes since it gives you a front-facing view. While firmware updates have certainly helped create some fantastic shots here, the speed and wind can certainly throw it off. It definitely is the most challenging follow mode for this drone. Another thing to note is that these program modes are designed for tracking people. So if you want to follow a car or pan to focus on something else, you'll need to use the manual mode. Now, I've crashed this drone about a half dozen times now, all at relatively high speeds, probably over 10, 15 miles an hour. Unfortunately, the last one, I did end up cracking the cage, but the cage is replaceable, and I actually have a new one on order, but it didn't arrive in time. The upside is that it worked it continues to work. I think I've used it 20, 30 flights since I broke it, and it's still going strong. All right, so while there are certainly some weird nuances, I really don't want those to overshadow just how much great footage I've gotten from this drone. So I've used it in all kinds of situations, and at times the results have been absolutely stunning and certainly well worth bringing along on trips. In moderate wind, the drone actually handles itself pretty well. I never flew in, I'd say, extreme conditions, but I did deal with some strong gusts and certainly steady winds on high mountain passes. The gimbal does a really great job of smoothing out those gusts, though the subject can drift off center as you see in this shot. Even then though, the footage is still totally usable, which I certainly appreciate. I was also actually really impressed with how well it performed at higher elevations. The windiest and subsequently the highest I ended up flying this drone was at the top of Star Pass. I think it's like 12,600 feet, just outside of Gunnison here. And it had no real issues. Most of my testing was done above 7,000 feet with one trip to Fruta. I think it's like 5,000 plus feet. But at higher elevations, drones tend to work harder. So you will likely see a battery life dip below the claimed 16 minutes on this drone. All right, so I've flown it in very light rain, nothing major since it's not designed for that. And of course, in very dry and dusty conditions, which we're in right now. One nice perk is that you can land it in your palm rather than actually landing it down on the ground, which certainly keeps it away from all that dust and debris. As for temperatures, I did use it close to freezing, but I haven't tested it in true winter conditions yet. That is on my list this year, so I will add a note in the comments once I do test it in sub-freezing temperatures. All right, so I did keep the drone in auto mode most of the time because I felt like the color looked good and it was simply easier. But it does support ND filters and log shooting. So for those who are unfamiliar with log shooting basically captures a wider dynamic range, meaning more detail in highlights and shadows, but produces a flat kind of desaturated image that requires color grading. Even without shooting in log, I actually found the color to be pretty solid in both sunny and at dusk. And you can quickly fine tune your settings like ISO, shutter speed, and white balance in manual mode. So if you want to dive a little bit deeper into log workflows for this drone specifically, there are plenty of great YouTube tutorials out there. All right, so the photos actually look really good too. You can shoot in RAW, but I actually stuck with the normal JPEG mode, and I was really happy with the results, even with a touch of editing afterwards. So like video, low light shots can get a little noisy, but in the daylight, they are super sharp and vibrant. So I don't typically take many drone photos, but well, these photos actually have me rethinking that altogether, which is kind of exciting. All right, so the Hover app it's rather simple, but it covers everything that you need, if that all makes sense. On the bottom, you've got basically your menu here. So you've got a few tabs. Home, which basically is a built-in kind of social media feed where you can share your hover shots, HOVERAir shots with other users. Then you have store, pretty self-explanatory here. They want to sell you stuff. Then the Hover tab, which is the tab that I use the most. This is where you connect to your drone. You can locate it if you lost it, tweak kind of settings, and much more. This is where you can basically set up all of your flight settings for each mode and really so much more. And you can also find your footage on this page as well. Then you have flight modes, which actually lets you preview what each flight mode does. This actually was really helpful when I first got the device. And then after that, you've got Me, which is basically your profile page where you can kind of manage your hover care and other account information. Over the years, I've been blown away by how far POV cameras have come. The stability, the durability, the sheer usefulness. And I will admit, I don't use that POV footage as much as I used to, but I still love my GoPro. Now with tech moving forward, it feels like we're in an era of third-person shots, and plenty of companies are jumping into that space. Heck, even people that make selfie sticks. But really, third-person drone shots. And well, the HOVERAir ProMax fits right into that style of camera. But it does go a little bit further with their higher resolution video features that honestly does a really fantastic job of capturing the kind of footage that I normally would shoot on my DJI Mini 3 Pro without actually needing to make space for a dedicated remote in my bags. Now, I'm no drone expert here. I've only used a few here and there, but I do know a thing or two about shooting video and convenience. And the HOVERAir ProMax is the drone that I'm going to continue to keep with me because, well, it offers the best quality in the smallest package, at least that I've found. So as for pricing, if top tier video resolution isn't a must for you, then the X1 Pro might actually be a good starting point, and that's priced at $499 USD. The Pro Max is $699 USD, a $200 jump, which I do think is worth it if you are into those visual elements. Not cheap, obviously, but also not unreasonable in, well, the drone world. My tip is you should go with that power bundle so that you can get the external battery charger and extra battery at a slight discount, as you will want that extra battery and that charger will charge your batteries a little bit faster. All right, so that about does it. The HOVERAir ProMax. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. And please let me know if you like this style of video. I haven't really talked too much about what I use to make my videos. So this is certainly new, but yeah, let me know your thoughts. As always, thank you all so much for watching. If you like what you saw in this video and want to see more like it, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell. And of course, if you want to help support this YouTube channel, everything we're doing at BIKEPACKING.com, you can do so by joining the Bikepacking Collective. The collective offers a lot of really neat perks, including industry discounts, monthly giveaways, the twice-yearly bikepacking journal, and the all-new base camp. So to learn a little bit more about the collective or to join, you can click on the card in the top right corner, or also follow the link in the description below. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, pedal further.